Today I'll be talking about graffiti and how it should be considered artwork and not considered vandalism. Today I will be opening with a quote from Burrock from a 2018 source that he said, "Instead of being considered a meaningful expression, graffiti is seen as vandalism. This is an unfair label to give something that requires the same creativity and hard work as other forms of street art." So today I want to talk about how graffiti should be considered artwork and not vandalism, for the main points being that graffiti helps young children in neighborhoods that are not considered the best, and is also seen as helping those learn about art in a new form and learning about new forms of art that should also be considered. My second point is that it's symbolic and that it has meaning to people. So taking away that meaning and taking away their freedom and calling it vandalism and getting them in trouble for something they created is not something that should happen. So firstly, I will be talking about how graffiti is a type of art that should be honored. My first main point is that graffiti is for people to express themselves without having to be known. So graffiti gives people a way to express themselves and to show what they can do and what kind of art they have in them by not being known also. A good example of this would be Banksy. Since he's an artist that doesn't have, no one really knows who he is, and for a while his art was considered vandalism, but then honored as real art because he started to become popular and it was considered beautiful and had a way of showing what he was wanting to be. Graffiti art is mostly seen as, in rural areas, what people considered had side of towns. So people didn't see it as art, and just because this is done on such bad side of towns, people didn't think it could be something good and something that could be done by people that were trying good. Instead, it was seen as bad. And this is mostly because they weren't good neighborhoods and people didn't see them as trying to do good things, and just because they started off as bad kids doing this doesn't mean that they're always going to be bad. Maybe they're just trying to find a way to express themselves in different ways, and this is a type of art way of doing it. But them getting in trouble for it doesn't help them find ways to express themselves. Instead, it puts them into the system and gives them worse options to do afterwards. And a quote I found is from a source. Is from a 2009 by Brown. It says, "Graffiti is literally the writings on the wall. This is the voice of those who cannot find the other way to publish their thoughts anonymously. The term is used to describe a public visual expression that has not been sanctioned by a commissionary authority." So this is just a type of art form that is not seen by people because it is not, by the public's eye, the right way of doing things, because they do it on sides of buildings and they don't get permission, but sometimes it's because there's nowhere else they can do it to get permission. Everything is considered a bad place to do it. Secondly, I will be talking about how graffiti is art and can help troubled youths and communities. Graffiti is a way to give the troubled youth ways to help them find better ways to do things in their community rather than doing bad things like joining gangs and falling into like bad crowds. So like earlier I talked about Banksy and his art, how it was not considered popular by the people at first, but then once he started to become popular around the art community, everyone started to acknowledge him. But then they didn't consider his art graffiti, but still considered other people's art graffiti just because he became big. And that wasn't something that was right and should have been done. A supporting point I found is by a 2018 quote by Jefferson in an article it says, "It is understandable that people don't want things graffitied, but like said in the article, why don't we find places where people can do that and give them places to express themselves?" So in the article, he talks about how he feels like we need to give them places. We need to find public places where we let people just do graffiti so that they can have that art space and not get in trouble for it, because that is something they like, and not just because we want them to be bad and because we don't want to consider it always such a bad thing. So there are ways to make graffiti can be considered art rather than vandalism. It's just we choose not to just because we don't think that the right people want to do graffiti. But in reality, not everyone who does graffiti is bad. So to bring this all to a close, I will be saying my conclusion, which is there are so many artists that have become famous through graffiti but are not considered graffiti artists anymore because graffiti is not considered an art. And I feel like that is not right, because if they started with graffiti, that is considered their art. And if they are able to have that shown, but it not be called graffiti, since that is just vandalism, but it be called art, is hypocritical and should not be a thing. So technically, it should just be considered art to help everyone in communities and just give them a way to express themselves. So in my closing thought is going to be that I do believe graffiti is a beautiful thing and can be seen as beautiful with everyone around, but just because certain people want to be spiteful and not consider it art and consider it vandalism because of a few that do mess it up for others, but the some that just try to do it to be creative need a way to be creative, and we need to give them that ability, and we need to find ways to help them do it the right way instead of trying to stop them. And maybe that should be our goal. Thank you.